Today, we are going to be taking a look at Zoroark EX. Zoroark EX is a deck that has had a little bit of an identity crisis, I think, before Ascended Heroes. It didn't really know how to get that perfect 60. It lacked quite a few things. It lacked that aggression. It lacked damage output. But I think with a new inclusion from Ascended Heroes, it answers a lot of the questions Zoroark was asking, and that main question is the damage output. So today we're going to take a look at my deck list and a way on how I would be playing the deck, and also just general tips for the deck, and just basically a little bit of a guide. If you guys do want the full guide, however, that will be over on my Metafy, and the first 3 people to get the guide with code Zoroark will get it 100% free, right? I mean, this is my job. I do need to make a little bit of money somehow. So if you guys do want to support the channel or support me, then go ahead and grab the guide down below for $5. It goes through all of the matchups, all the meta matchups today. And if you guys are wondering on how the guide looks like, we will be going through one matchup today, being the Goldengo matchup. And if you like the way I explain that matchup, then I do the exact same thing for all the other matchups as well. And you can get all of that and more for $5. If you guys want to support the channel, then leave the link down. I'll leave the link down below. Like I said, first 3 people that use code Zoroark will get it for free. And a shameless shilling. I'm sorry, but you know, I have to make some money somewhere. So thank you for all the support. Well, Zoroark is played by top players. If we take a look at someone like Piper Lepine or Liam Halliburton, both these players are really, really good, and they both choose to play Zoroark, even if it's not seen as the greatest deck in the game right now, or if it doesn't have great matchups. It still is really good when piloted by a really good player. That's not to say Zoroark doesn't have its weaknesses. Its weaknesses are that you still have to attack with a 2-prize attacker, right? Zoroark EX itself is a 2-prize attacker, and even though it is kind of a box deck, you still have to attack with Zoroark, because you're copying other Pokemon's attacks on the bench while attacking with Zoroark, meaning even though you have a lot of different types of attackers, you are still attacking with a dark type, which in current format is really good because you swing for weakness into things like God of War EX, and God of War EX is the best deck in the game right now, so that is definitely a good thing. And the strengths are, it has a built-in consistency engine, right? Trade is a great ability. Unlike something like Dracloak, where you look at the top 2 cards, put one into your hand and one at the bottom of the deck, you're not really thinning your deck, right? Like, your deck isn't getting smaller. If you get Iono'd, this still going to be the same amount of cards in your hand and deck, right? But Trade discards a card from your hand and draws 2. So you guaranteed get 2 cards and you discard a bad card, right? If you don't really need something, let's say you don't need a Buddy Puffin at the end of the game, you can just discard it, right? And then see 2 fresh cards, and if you get judged or Iono'd or unfair stamped, you're not going to have to worry about drawing back into that Buddy Puffin. Whereas something like Dracloak, there is the odds that you're going to draw back into that Buddy Puffin even if you put it at the bottom of your deck. Not only that, Zoroark can be built in many ways. Zoroark is a very flexible attacker. That's usually kind of how it is. Since it has a built-in draw engine, you can build it in many different ways, and it doesn't really have a solved 60, unlike something like God of War or Dragapult, right? It doesn't have a solved 60 because it kind of tends to change depending on the meta. If Goldengo is very popular, then we see the Darmanitan coming out, we see the Toadscruel coming out. If Goldengo wasn't there, then we probably wouldn't be seeing those cards. So today we're going to be taking a look at Zoroark in the Ascended Heroes format. This is the format I will be playing the most of, and it's the format that I have been playing a lot. I was in Japan for quite a while when Zekrom initially came out, so I have quite a bit of experience on this deck already. I've won a few tournaments over in Japan with a list similar to what I'll be taking a look at today, and I feel like I am quite comfortable with this deck right now. In fact, it's a deck that I am actively testing to take to an SPE at the end of March. South Africa only gets 1 SPE, so I kind of have to, try quite hard to, win or place really well as SPE, because this is my only real way to try and qualify for the World Championships this year. So the general idea of Zoroark is that Zoroark is a deck that likes to play from behind, as during the early game you'll usually be establishing your board state consisting of multiple stage 1s. However, this does not mean you can't get aggressive and punish your opponents for having slower starts, as it will give you a lot more time in the later stages of the game to try and set up a checkmate, or have an easier time piecing together your last few prize cards. Zoroark is a deck that sets up for the late game, as whenever you use trade you are thinning your deck, meaning after multiple turns of trades you should have access to your entire deck. Naturally, with an ability like trade, it gives you a lot more options and decisions to make, so familiarizing yourself with which cards are more important in various matchups is very important. Just like Dragapult, Zoroark is a slower deck, meaning games can take longer, and both players will be forced to make more decisions than usual. So if you are comfortable with the deck, you can usually identify when your opponent is making a mistake and capitalize off of that. So there's quite a few things to take away from here, starting off with Zoroark liking to play from behind. Zoroark is a deck that does tend to like to play from behind, but like I said, you can get aggressive. With Zekrom right now, you have a lot more initiative to actually take and enter the prize trade, right? Let's say something against something like Terrorbox, right? It's sometimes quite difficult to swing for 2 prizes in the early game, right? Maybe you'll have Darmanitan, sure, but other than that, it's kind of difficult to actually just hit 210 damage, right? You had Reshiram, which can do 170, but then you need Mochi, you need multiple pieces to actually swing for that 210 damage. You need your Pekaron to poison your Zoroark needs 2 energy, and you also need the Mochi to actually bump up that damage, and then you still need the Reshiram. Whereas now, all you really need is the Zekrom, right? And the Zoroark set up. And then you can be swinging for 250 and you can start initializing the price trade. Unlike Dragapult, where it really relies on checkmating stuff and like damage here and damage there and damage there, Zoroark doesn't really like to spread damage. It likes to take those clean knockouts. It likes to trade prize cards quite efficiently with opposing decks. So it's definitely a deck that you won't get punished for just getting really aggressive with, because your attacker is your draw engine, right? So it's not like Dragapult, where you need to evolve into your attacker out of your draw engine with Dracloak. Whenever you evolve out of Dracloak, it means you're kind of entering that stage of the game where you're going to be drawing less cards and focusing on the attack. Whereas Zoroark, it's you want to evolve into Zoroark as fast as possible because that is your draw engine and also your attacker, so you don't get punished for getting too aggressive. So here is the deck list we are going to be taking a look at today. This is a deck list I've been playing for a little bit as well, and I have really been enjoying it. So it consists of obviously the 4/4 Zoroark and also a 2/2 Darmanitan line. I enjoy the 2/2 Darmanitan line because not only is it a great answer for your Goldengo matchup, because Zoroark does tend to struggle with Goldengo, so that really helps against that, but it also helps against any other deck in the format that has to evolve. For example, if Gardevoir is a little bit slow, this can just win you the game, right? Gardevoir, Dragapult, Goldengo itself in the early game, Zoroark, mirror matches, Charizard, Terrabox decks, anything that has to evolve, Darmanitan can punish in the early stage of the game. If you greed and go first and you get turned to Flame Body Cannon, you win that game a lot of the time, right? Because you don't really lose to Disruption because of your built-in draw engine, right? And you're also taking out 2 of their basic Pokemon and initializing that 2-price trade. And if they can't respond, well, you can just do it again, right? You don't have to attack with Flame Body Cannon. In fact, you can't attack with Flame Body Cannon on the Darmanitan because we aren't playing Reversal Energy. This is a deck that is much more focused on getting Zoroark established and swinging with Night Joker and copying Flame Body Cannon. But something that you can attack with the Darmanitan is the Backdraft. Backdraft is a great attack and the main reason that you are able to beat Goldengo with this list. So Backdraft, as you can see, costs 2 colorless energy, which is very important because Backdraft does 30 damage for each energy in your opponent's discard pile. If, let's say, the Goldengo player has 5 energy in the discard pile, well, that means you are doing 150 damage, right? And that's important because you just one-shot a Goldengo, right? So, very nice. And because if they want to one-shot a Zoroark, they have to discard 6 energy, or if they swing into it and deal 70 damage with a Solrock, they still have to discard 5 energy, right? Because it'll go down to 210. So this is the perfect number for your Backdraft to still swing for a knockout, right? It is great because they have to discard 5 energy, meaning you have to discard. I mean, you can deal that much damage. You can deal 150 damage. 150 times 2 is 300 because of weakness. And bam, there you go, right? So, very good attack. It also helps against matchups like Ceruledge or just anything else that discards energy. There's not many decks, I guess, that discard a lot of energy. It can maybe help you late game against a Gardevoir sometimes, but I mean, usually you're just going to be attacking with the Zoroark into Gardevoir, let's be real. But this is a great answer to any evolution deck and also your main answer against Goldengo. Then we have Reshiram, and Reshiram, I think, still is a very important attack. I don't think you can cut Reshiram yet. Reshiram is a very important attack and wins you a lot of matchups. My mouse died. Against any deck that does want to swing into you and can't just one-shot you, for example Dragapult, for example Charizard, right? These are both decks that are right now doing quite well in the meta. Charizard, Dawnzard is a pretty good deck. Dragapult is obviously a great deck, and neither of these can actually just one-shot you, right? So that's why Powerful Rage is really good. And it's the main reason you can actually beat these decks. A lot of times you don't need Zekrom in those matchups, and Reshiram is really good. But I'm not saying you don't need Zekrom in those matchups. You can still use Zekrom because Zekrom is really good. Rampaging Thunder, 250 damage. If we add that Black Belt's training, that goes up to 290. If we add a Mochi, that goes up to 330. That is one-shotting Charizard. You know, you can now just go out of your way, one-shot a Charizard, bam. You can one-shot a Dragapult, bam. And they don't need to hit you, and you have to, like, you know, Powerful Rage into them. You can just go, all right, I'm gonna just kill that. Thanks. So very, very good. On top of that, Dawnzard is a deck that requires a Terra Pokemon. Usually that Terra Pokemon is something like a Terrapagos. And Terrapagos has 230 HP. We could not hit 230 beforehand very easily whatsoever with Virtuous Flame. We would not want to waste a Binding Mochi and a Black Belt's Training. In fact, it's very difficult to use both these because usually you'll have to gust up that Terrapagos in the first place. So you'd also need your Counter Catcher. It's a very hard combo to hit just for those 2 prize cards, right? But now what we can do is we can bench Zekrom, Boss's Orders, take 2 prize cards, right? Thanks. We don't even have to use any of our damage mods. They're going to come back, they're going to be like, alright, I'm going to swing into you. They're not going to take a knockout because, well, we have a lot of HP, and we can have even more with Hero's Cape, right? We can have 380 HP, which is very, very strong, right? And then from there, they'll swing into us. We'll go, alright, cool, Night Joker, copy Powerful Rage, take a knockout there, and our last 2 prize cards can be the aforementioned Binding Mochi plus Black Belt's Training combo. We have very many ways to beat decks like Dawnzard and decks like Dragapult right now because they have a lot to worry about it. You know, they can't go for this play anymore where they are completely safe if they don't leave damage on board, right? Because, well, they kind of have to leave damage on board a lot of times. And don't forget, Monkey Dory is still busted as all hell, right? It is essentially a plus 30 against decks that don't one-shot you. Right? So now what we can do is we can slap a Binding Mochi onto our Zoroark, attack with Rampaging Thunder, that's 290, right? Plus that 30, if we had the 30 damage on us and we can move that around, that's 320, right? That's one-shotting Dragapult. We don't need, like, a lot to deal with Dragapult anymore. We need 1 damage mod and Monkey establish, and we're going to be establishing Monkey against Dragapult 90% of the time. So it's very, very good. You might be thinking, well, what happens if they go for a very heavy Dusk Noir line, right? If they try set up multiple Dusk Noirs. Well, that's where Darmanitan comes in, right? We can swing with Darmanitan. We can go Zoroark, bring up, you know, Flame Body Cannon, and attack. And we can chain that together with Janine's Secret Arts. It's another way we can poison our Pokemon for the Mochi without having to bench Pekron, because a lot of the times you don't actually want to bench Pekron, right? That is why we are playing double Ends Castle. Ends Castle is a great stadium, and it just gives us a lot of maneuverability, because a lot of the time we won't have bench space for the Pekron, and we don't actually want to bench the Pekron, because it just doesn't really feel good in a lot of the sense. It's just not like something that we want to do, because against decks like Gardevoir, they can just snipe the Pekron for 2 easy prizes, and we do not want to be giving Gardevoir easy prize cards, right? Hero's Cape makes it a little bit more difficult to give them easy prize cards. Something that we were worried about in the Gardevoir matchup was, since we don't hit Diancie for weakness, right, we can only deal 250 damage to them, or we can obviously go Mochi, Black Belt's Training, and go, you know, those higher numbers. We don't really want to be wasting all of that for Diancie. Like, sure, there's 3 prize cards, so it's not that bad, to be honest, but it's just, you know, kind of scary when they can just one-shot us back. That's the problem, is that they can just one-shot us, and then we have to go through a lot to one-shot them. But Hero's Cape changes that entirely. Hero's Cape puts us to 380, puts us completely out of range out of Diancie, and now, if they actually attack with Diancie, well, it's a bad day for them, right? So this is a list that I'm pretty comfortable in. It's pretty consistent. You're playing, you know, your 4 Lilies, your 3 Ionos, Quad Poffin, Triple Ultra, and Double Pokepad. Pokepad is great for finding your Darmanitans, and also just, you know, any of these guys, including the Zoroas. Triple Ultra is nice. Obviously, you can see this deck isn't playing a TM Evo because it's not playing Arven, and it's also not playing Cyrano, so you do have to draw into the Zoroarks. That's why we are playing a heavier count of Ultra Ball, and also a Cleffa. Cleffa is just a great card. I love Cleffa. Ends Castle lets you get into Cleffa quite often, and it's just a really amazing card that, in my opinion, has done a lot for me. So, the decklist idea, we have gone over this. You guys can read this, pause here if you want to read this. So here's Goldengo. Goldengo, the matchup, I think, becomes a lot easier. So something that Goldengo would like to do against us is stay in a single prize board state, but that's where Darmanitan comes in and pressures them. If they want to stay in a single prize board state with only the Solrocks, the Lunatones, and also the Gimmighouls, we can get aggro. We can boss up the Gimmighoul and just take 2 prizes, right? And that's perfect, because, well, now what? Right, they have to evolve and respond because they can't still stay in a 1 prize board state because we're just going to do it again, right? Or we can just keep chaining Darmanitans until we just win. And if they deal 30 damage to us, what's something we can do? Monkey Dory 30 damage over to them, and then take 1 knockout and put 90 damage elsewhere. We can still even just take 2 knockouts because we don't even have to boss at that point. Because if they are swinging with something like a Solrock, 70 damage, not killing us, we can move 30 damage over onto the active Solrock, kill a Gimmighoul on the bench, kill the active Solrock, and there we go. Right? And this will force them out into Goldengo. Once they're in Goldengo, you do want to make sure you have your double Darmanitan out, your double Daru marker Darmanitan. That is why the board state is very important to have your double Daru, right? And something that they might do instead, if they go a little bit more aggressive and try and evolve into Goldengo first, like they just want to go Goldengo and swing for 2, then obviously Zekrom is great, because Zekrom you can just take the knockout. So this is a matchup where it is quite important to... 3 Zoro is nice, but I feel like maybe 2 Zoro might be a little bit better in the early game, just until you identify what they're trying to do. Because a nice play that you can do is actually go into your 1 prize board state while attacking with the Daru. Since they don't play Iono, they don't play Disruption, you can just pick up your Zoroark, go into a 1 prize board state, put down your Zoros back, and then next turn triple evolve once you force them into a 1 prize board state and go into like odd prize cards. Because if they take the first 2 prizes, it can be difficult to get back into the game. So you can pick up your Zoroark, you can go into Darmanitan, take a knockout, right? And then you'll be on 4 prizes, they'll be on 3 prizes once they take a knockout on that turn. Then you can evolve back into your Zoroark, you can take a knockout on Goldengo, you'll go down to 2 prizes, and if they take a knockout, they'll go down to 1 prize, and then you'll obviously win the game taking the last 2 prizes. So it's just making sure you are able to prize race them correctly, and making sure that your board state looks accordingly. Like if they are going on odd prizes, then making sure you have a 1 prize board state. If you've taken the first 2 prizes, you basically win the game, right? So like I said over here, Dom, KO, Gimme, or Force Backdraft into Dengo. 2 bench Daru means you can chain them with using PP up, because remember you can PP up to power up the Daru markers and Darmanitans instead of Zoroark, and then Zekrom can also just force a 2 prize race. If you take another 2 prizes, prize lead with Dom, this will usually win you the game due to just having so much access to knocking out Goldengos. Any damage mod will knock out a Goldengo. Notes, if you're able to boss KO to Gimme or KO Dengo before they take 2 prizes, the game is fairly simple. Make sure you don't give them a low HP 1 prizer in that mid game if they take 1 prize early, as they can go back into even prizes on a 1 prize board state. Don't forget that Goldengo also plays Turo, so they can do the exact same thing I was telling you can do, is that they can go into a 1 prize board state, take a knockout on like a Zorua, and then, you know, you kind of have to take 1 prize back, but at that point it's just too late. So price checking over here is the Peckrunt and the Mochi, because you do want to be poisoning your stuff, since you'll have a lot of 2 prizes in play anyway. Peckrunt's not that bad to put down if you need to poison your guy. The Dom line is obviously really important, bosses are important, stretches are important, PP-ups are important, and Zekrom is important. And on top of that, I would also say something to keep in mind is that you can actually attack with the Peckrunt, right? Because it is just a good attacker, and also a Hero's Cape on a Zoroark early can sometimes just let it survive, because it's quite difficult for Goldengo to establish 8 energy to discard, right? Because we have 380 HP, meaning they have to discard 8 energy, and on top of that have a 9th attached to Goldengo. So if you just evolve into a Zoroark on that second turn and you start swinging, it is sometimes very difficult for them to just respond. They sometimes just will not be able to respond. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this content, smash a like, smash a subscribe, and I appreciate all the support on the channel recently. And yeah, like I said, if you guys want to support the channel, I'll leave a link to the Metafy down below. The guide is there for $5 or for free if you're one of the first 3 people to go there and buy it. Thank you.